Welcome to Shameless Leadership. I'm your host, Sarah Dean. This show is for women leaders who are committed to advancing both their own leadership and the leadership of those around them. In each episode, I offer practical strategies and inspiring stories to help you become a more confident, compassionate, and curious leader. The truth is, you were born to lead. So let's start now, together. Hello, Shameless Leaders. Today I have my colleague and my dear friend, Sage Hobbs, back on the podcast. She's joined me a few times now on the show, and I always love our conversations. Sage is someone who I really admire professionally. She's done a lot of work that are things that I have aspired to do, or like at different points in my career thought, oh, maybe I would do that. And she's done all those things. So she's a therapist. She's been a school counselor, which is something I wanted to do for a while. She works in equity work in supporting leaders in education and just does all sorts of cool stuff. She's an author, another thing that someday when I grow up, I want to be. And so I love having Sage on the show to talk to her about work, but I also love talking to her about personal things and stories as well. I think you're going to see yourself in some of what we talk about today. I think you're going to learn a few things, probably laugh a little bit. We're going to be talking about naked communication. This is a book that Sage wrote years ago. I actually interviewed her when the book first came out, and she's just re-released the book. And so we're going to talk about what was behind that. Professionally, Sage Hobbs is an author, a facilitator, and a coach whose work combines her background in school psychology with a passion for helping people communicate with clarity, courage, and compassion. She empowers leaders and teams to navigate challenges, build trust, and strengthen the relationships that drive personal and professional success. Sage began her career as a school counselor, an experience that shaped her understanding of complex communication and reinforced her belief that our happiness and success are tied to the quality of our relationships. Amen. She has since worked with schools, districts, nonprofits, and global organizations to foster emotional intelligence, positive culture, and effective leadership. Sage is also the author of Naked Communication, Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want, and the host of the Principal Pep Talks podcast, bringing candid conversation to the real challenges of leadership. With a master's in counseling and psychology from the University of Colorado, Denver, and a bachelor's from the University of Pennsylvania, Sage is also a proud mom of two, a cancer survivor, and a lover of humor, books, and the occasional kitchen dance party. So listen in to hear Sage share why facilitating connection is a critical leadership skill, how rewarding leaders for having all the right answers has undermined connection and leadership, what missed opportunities for connection costs leaders and organizations, why people avoid hard conversations, and why moments of discomfort in communication are actually imperative for our growth. Sorry, not sorry. You have to get uncomfortable. She also talks about the distinction between leadership and management when it comes to communication, how to leverage curiosity, clarity, and compassion in communication as a connection to pathway, and the 4 things that you can do today to improve your communication and ability to connect in a meaningful way. This is a great conversation. Always so fun to have Sage on the show. So with all of that, please join me in welcoming Sage Hobbs back to Shameless Leadership. Sage, welcome to Shameless Leadership. It's our second 5-year podcast anniversary.
We just realized this. I love it.
So you were on the show like 10 years ago when it was a new baby show back in the days of the Shameless Mom Academy. And then you came on, we think 5 or so years ago. We didn't look up the specific date. And now here we are now. So it's our every 5 years. What are we going to talk about for our 15-year anniversary?
Oh my gosh, I'm sure we'll have plenty. Life just keeps happening. It hasn't seemed to slow down yet, Sarah, so we'll be good.
And I'm sure 5 years ago, when we recorded in like 2021-ish, we were like, well, as soon as we get through this, and look where we are now.
Yep, that was the pandemic
what have we gotten
and the George
through?
Floyd right, I know. Here we are, still going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to be talking today about your book that you came on to talk about 10 years ago. You've relaunched your book, re-released your book. So we're going to dig into all of that. Why don't you, before we dig into communication and connection and leadership skills, can you just talk a little bit about what prompted you to relaunch a book that you wrote 10 or so years ago?
Yeah, happily. One part of it will make you laugh because, and anybody who knows you and listens to your show, it was a man's reflection back to me in my professional world who has a very huge and successful consulting and coaching business. And he was like, you have a book with like a lot of Amazon reviews. you're not telling anybody about it? He said, I paid somebody good money to get me a book, that I could use for my positioning. And it was just such a once again, donk, like every time I think I've reached the next level of confidence, I realize still how I play small in the next zone. Right. And so that was one piece. It was just he was like, this is an asset that you're underutilizing and it could really, really help people. It sounds like it really has helped people. He went and looked it up. He didn't even hardly know me. We were just in a shared consulting group in our community. So that was it planted this seed. And I was like, what the heck, man? Maybe that's just the competitiveness in me. I was like, yeah, that's right, And then secondarily, and, I don't know how much this will come up, but Sarah, you've known me for a decade at least. You know that my mom very unexpectedly died a year and a half ago. And it upended my world. And that was the loss of my second parent. I've lost both parents. And so there was a real exploration of purpose and identity and how do I want to spend my time? I'm almost 50 and the world has taken another turn for towards anger and tension and misunderstanding and violence. And I just thought, you know what? This is the way that I can be of service in some small way, in my sphere of influence. What I really got from my parents and then their death is the profound beauty of connection and authentic relationships and the ability to really listen to other people regardless of your different backgrounds and just this beauty of human connection. And so in the wake of my mom's death and then with this man's nudging, I just was like, you know what? This is something I have to offer, and it was really just my own ego that was keeping it buried anyway. Nothing's ever good enough. All these things you hear your clients and podcast guests probably speak to all the time, these accomplished people still saying when is something going to be good enough? So it just felt and I've been writing a ton more since my mom died in more of a literary exploration of grief and midlife. And so I was in that writing space and it felt good for me personally and good professionally as something to maybe be of service in a time where people seem really desperate for connection and community.
I love it. I think I was talking to someone actually in an interview I was doing earlier today. We were talking about impact and a life of leadership where impact is the through line. And that I think oftentimes in life and leadership, where we start, when we start out in our early on careers, we could never guess where we would end up. And so if I think about Sarah at 22 with her fresh little degree in sociology, working at the psychiatric hospital, I would have there's no way I could have envisioned that this is where I would be today in 2026. I mean, podcasting didn't exist. So, but there's so many components of what I do that I would have never imagined. And so when we think about being in those early phases of career and leadership and looking ahead, we can't envision what we have, where we're going to land. But when we look back, we can look at, oh, wait, I did that and I did that and I did that. And we can see these through lines and these connections, and we can see some of the themes that come up for us. And as I was talking to this woman today, we were talking about impact and impact being a consistent theme for so many leaders and I think a motivator. And as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about that it sounds like impact was a motivator for you in looking back at, I have this thing. It had impact when I first wrote it and launched it, shared it with the world. And if I am a person who has a value of having impact in the world and sharing my gifts with the world, then here's an opportunity to do that and use this and to update this tool and use it again. And then I think it becomes almost irresponsible if we don't do that, if I'm a person who values impact and values sharing tools and resources, now I have to do this.
Right. I mean, but it's so easy to fall back into I value impact and connection more than I value people liking me or thinking I'm smart enough or an excellent writer or whatever it is. But you can get caught up in that inner critic voice again, And again, I work with people on this all the time too.
Totally.
And So it was like time to switch that off again and re-step into, and I rewrote about 20% of the book, or so that, because we also learn and grow a ton in 10 years, right? In a decade, like, my work has
Yeah.
expanded into a much more robust framework and model that I've now utilized with hundreds of people. And so the essence of the messaging was all really still the same. Like, that was interesting too, like what I had made into a monster in my
Oh, I
head.
bet.
I finally
Wait,
forced
can we
myself to
talk about that
reread.
part? Yeah, well, let's talk about that part. Because were you like, oh, I did this 10 years ago. It's probably like, it's stupid and old. That's what I
Oh,
would be thinking about something from 10 years ago.
oh my gosh. Girl, I can't even with how much I cringed. You know what I mean? And I just actually was just on a podcast that was geared towards writers, called Authors Who Lead. And he kind of like chose that as a caption for my show. When your old work makes you cringe, but you know that it's still meaningful to others, what do you do? Like, how do you get out of your own way? And it was, first I just had to get a new cover. Here, look, Sarah told me to grab one beforehand. And the cover, I like really love
hold
it
up the new
now.
cover.
I love it. It's so simple, and the
Yes.
chaos to the insight, it just feels like, and I can stand behind that. The other one was more of, I don't even want to talk about it. My face was on it. Let's just say that. Bad advice somebody gave me. Boop. Unless you're like Oprah Winfrey or something, maybe, no thank you on that. But,
But
yes,
10 years ago, just different. Yeah.
different branding, different idea of what, and it was fine. Nobody else cared about that as much as I did. That's what I really like. It is, you said something about it would be a disservice not to offer what you're good at in the world. And I love this quote by Audre Lorde, not to be grandiose, but I've always loved her work so much. And it says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the courage, I might get this a little bit wrong, of my vision, to use my strength in pursuit of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. And I just, it's like,
so good.
if I really stand in that, right? Like, and also, you know what the funny thing is? It's hard to get people to read books. Like, here I am like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? And really the bigger challenge is getting people to pick up a book and read the whole thing and really, you know what I mean? I'm like, what if people think this or that? Oh no, like, great. That means they read it. That means they then maybe are listening to their boss or their colleague or their partner or their teenager, like, with a more open heart and empathetic ear. Like, cool. That would be a great problem to have. So what if a little criticism comes in along the way?
And I would imagine that there was also, for every moment that you look back and cringed on, there were moments where you read something that you had written 10 years ago and thought, oh my gosh, this is really good. Oh my gosh, I actually am really smart. Oh my gosh, I actually know what I'm talking about.
That's why I love you, Sarah. You're the best cheerleader in the world. Were there as many? I don't know. It depends on the day and like how loud my inner critic voice was playing. But yeah, no, what fundamentally I felt was the book is like a combination of core values, educational experience, like a master's in counseling psychology, and then an entire multi-decade career of service that woven all together into things I still fully stand behind. That was absolutely accurate. I was like, okay, so I write better now. I made it it was more interpersonally geared before, and I wanted to make it so that it was relevant in the workplace because so much of my work is in schools and organizations. So that was a shift that I made just in terms of the examples and stories that I added and tell. But really, yeah, at its essence, yes, I was proud of some of it. I guess that's minus the cover.
Good. I always liked the cover.
I know. That's the thing. Our own, it doesn't matter what, it's just this in our heads, sometimes.
I know. Okay, so let's talk about, you talk about the values that upheld through, when you returned to the book, the values that still stood strong and that were part of what the work that you still do. So let's talk about connection as a leadership skill.
Yeah.
And when we think about connection as a leadership skill, where do leaders miss the mark or misunderstand things? And especially as this pertains to communication in the workplace and how we create opportunities for connection or don't, or miss opportunities for connection.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was like eager. I was like, let me get at it. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about. So cut me off at any time. But I'm so annoyed by this idea that certain things are soft skills when they're really the hardest
Yeah.
skills that there are. And
Yeah.
communication is not a nice to have. Like, it's not like, oh, it would be nice
Yeah.
if we had a team that could listen to each other, trust each other, um, throw out creative ideas and innovative ideas so that we can take their work to the next level. Like, that's not a nice to have. It's a leadership competency, you know? It's not. And so
Mm-hmm.
just like you can't exist in the world without being able to function inside of the Google suite or Microsoft. Like, you need to be able as a leader to speak in a way that people understand you and listen in a way that people feel seen, heard, and valued, or you cannot lead effectively. That's where I think I've gotten
Right.
a lot clearer over a decade of more of work in this space. And so where I think what I hear the most, where I think I see leaders missing the mark the most is people don't listen to learn. They listen to be right. They listen for their turn to talk,
Yes.
to prove their
Yes.
point, right?
Yes.
So they're like, I could feel
Mm-hmm.
myself just doing it there when you were asking me that question. I was like, ooh, 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 I love this question, you know? Versus really being present to what is being said to me and what are all the subtle things
Right.
that are underneath what is being said to me. People can tell when you really listen to them. I mean, there's now a lot of discussion around attention is the biggest example of love and respect is giving somebody your attention because attention is so fleeting in our world these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's listening. And so I really see that a lot that leaders are conditioned to have the answers. They've been rewarded for having the answers and for making things happen
Mm-hmm.
quickly. So they often have a hard time taking a beat to make sure that they're actually listening to what's being said to them and that that person feels seen, heard, and valued, therefore will contribute more down the road. So listening to learn versus listening for your turn to speak, I would say is the um one of the top ones that I think where people get caught up. Another one is that lots of leaders miss the opportunity for meaningful recognition. I'm like, this is the lowest hanging fruit. It's
Yes. Ooh.
free.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh.
there's so much
Yeah.
research around if you give sincere, authentic, clear, and direct recognition to people for what they bring to your organization or your team or your school or company, whatever, the engagement goes up, the buy-in increases, the retention improves. I mean, I just know that my favorite boss, like, she was so good at that back in the day when I was a school counselor.
Yeah.
She had me seeing what I was good at before I could even see it for myself because I was young in my career. And I would have done
Yeah.
moved mountains for her because
Oh
I
my
felt so
gosh.
appreciated and validated. So those are the 2, I
My
guess,
first boss. Yeah. I love all of that. See, I just did it. It's just so excited to share
I
something.
know, I know. It's so hard.
um, no, I totally agree with you. And two things came to mind. One, which I've probably shared this with you before. I did this. I had the opportunity to do like speed executive coaching with a bunch
Yeah.
of leaders at an event couple of years ago, and it was so much fun. And this woman, one of the women I was talking with, who she was amazing, and she was a newer leader, and she was like very motivated to get it right. Like she wanted to do a really good job.
Yeah.
And so she was
Yeah.
telling me about how she had this one direct report who needed a lot of validation. And she was like, I just, I don't want to like give him too much positive feedback. I said, well, what do you think might happen? And she's like, well, I'm just afraid of, the more I give, the more he's going to need. And I was like,
Mm.
but that's free to give. Like there's not
Yeah,
a
it's
cost
free
to
to
that.
give.
And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I don't know. And it was just such an interesting mindset. And I was like, I'm just going to invite you to like give it a little more freely and see what
Yeah.
happens. Like, and see if you
Right.
get, some positive reinforcement back and see how that feels. And I also had to say, this might feel unfamiliar to you. It might feel like weird because you're not used to doing it. But again, like see how it feels as you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if if it feels like it fits well. And my guess is that it will. The other thing that I thought of is that I had my first boss. I worked in a doctor's office in high school, and I had this amazing office manager was my boss. I was a file clerk. Like I filed things. It was a very insignificant and unimportant role in this doctor's office. And my boss, though, made me feel like so it was a doctor's office of 5 OBGYNs. And she made me feel as important as the doctors who were
Yeah.
delivering babies every day.
Right.
Like, and I remember like wearing, like getting dressed for work and being like, I'm going to wear my like most professional out. I'm like 15. I'm like my most professional outfit for to go file, you know, but I was so
Yep.
motivated because she made me feel
Right.
so significant and constantly told me I was doing a good job that I couldn't wait to like show up and be amazing.
Right.
And
Right.
it was a
Right.
really positive experience.
Yeah. And you pointed out something there too, Sarah, like the way that what we need is not necessarily what other people need. So that
Mm-hmm.
the speed coaching situation where she might not need that kind of validation. I have leaders say that to me all the time. Like, I don't
Right.
need somebody to tell me over and over again I'm doing a good job. Like I know that I know how to do this. And so it's annoying that I need to constantly build this person up. You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't they just be able to do their job and feel good about the fact that they do their job? And I'm like, look, we all bring different things to the table. Who knows what came with that person where they need extra? You know, maybe that's just their cross
Yeah.
to bear in their life, but you as a leader, if you're going to be an exceptional leader, part of that is emotional intelligence. It's being able to read the room, read the space,
Mm-hmm.
understand your emotions, their emotions. So you might be going, ugh, I hate needy people who need a lot of compliments. You need to notice that that's a you thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
need to notice, well, this person, for whatever reason, maybe they had an absentee father. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
that's going to make them
Right.
perform better. And that's your job, which is to
Right.
build the internal leadership capacity and have people perform at their maximum potential. So your job is to figure out, what you're experiencing and what they're experiencing and how your communication can best serve to elevate um, the people who work with you.
Yeah. Okay, for people who are listening who are like, "Oh shoot, I've missed so many opportunities for good connection," or for validating people or giving that feedback, what's something that someone can either do like retroactively, like to return to maybe
Mhm.
a missed opportunity, or something that they could start implementing moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's never too late to build connections with people. I mean, I find that really exciting. Like you can choose at any point in your life or your career to be like, I'm ready for deeper connections with people at work or at home, and the
Mm-hmm.
way you can do that is ask more questions. So lead with
Mm-hmm.
curiosity. Folks do not do that enough. They just again, we're
Yeah.
sort of built to we're conditioned to prove ourselves, prove our value, prove our worth, and we
Mm-hmm.
think that means by stating our own expertise and what have you. So begin going back to your team and asking questions. Right, if you want to course correct because you've been sort of guiding over heavily handedly with your own information, or your own vision, let's start back with curiosity. That's one thing I would do. Second thing is I coached a lot of school principals and I would give them like two-a-days. It was one
Mm.
principal who had been like a big athlete and all through, his early career. And that's like if you have two practices in a day for those of you who aren't athletes, a morning and an afternoon. And I would just say, I want you to give two authentic um, pieces of praise to members of your staff
Mhm.
every day for a week and see what
Mhm.
happens, like an experiment,
Yeah.
and I just said, you have a little whiteboard, you just put a little check on your whiteboard or whatever
Mhm.
it is, or in your, each time you do it. So you can actually track for yourself if at the end of the week you've done 10 at the end of a work week, um, what happened. And it was wild. He was like, oh my gosh, people are talking to me differently. Like people are sharing
Yeah.
more with me. And, so you can just start building a habit and playing with what works for you. It doesn't mean you have to do two-a-day for the rest of your days, but sometimes you
Mhm.
need a jump start and just sort of experiment. So ask more questions and start with experimental recognition, would say. Anybody can do that starting like right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I love, you mentioned earlier, and I typed a little note for myself to return to this, that you mentioned how leaders are typically rewarded for having all the answers or for having the right answers. And when we look at that as the goal to have the right answers,
Right.
then that can undermine those opportunities for connection. And
Right.
so when we think about building a new habit and reinforcing that habit, doing something multiple times a day for a number of days in a row, it puts us in a different, we're exercising a new muscle, and we get to practice upholding the new thing, collecting that data, reinforcing it, validating it, and then
Hmm.
letting it become more naturally or organically integrated over time, which I think is
Hmm.
where then it doesn't feel like, okay, hold on, have I checked my boxes for the day? It's just how we just become a person who more frequently genuinely connects with people, because that's what they do, and that is what
Yes.
that
That's
becomes
the
authentic
goal.
to them.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's makes for more joyful work places of work. Like,
Oh,
people don't
100%.
want to talk about happiness, but I'm like, this is it. This is what we have as far as
Yeah.
we know, and then we don't have it anymore. This
Yeah.
experience of
Yeah.
life. And so, like, yes, we get rewarded for knowing the answers. We also get rewarded for being the ones who solve the problems most quickly. But ultimately,
Mhm.
the reward is, do you have like a company or an organization or a team that's like kicking butt because people are staying, they love it there, they're out there
Right.
being the face of your brand authentically because they value where they work, and all of that is
Mhm.
about the connections that you're making and the way that you're actually. And I have one more thing I just have to say about this, just real quick, but it's just,
Oh,
people
please.
think that that means, sometimes people get confused with connection, like intimacy versus, like, you can still have
Mm.
professional relationships that are really connected.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to
Yeah.
tell, I've been like, had lots of people say to me, well, I'm a private person. Like, I don't want to tell everybody my business at work. That's not who I am. Great. That's fine. But you can still, first of all, they might want to tell you and you can still listen if that's meaningful to them,
Mhm.
to be the receiver of something that's happening in their life. Their sister's having a baby, whatever it might be. But second of all, it's not
Right.
necessarily about your big, dark, private secrets. It's about
Yes.
um, your authentic communication around what you're feeling or experiencing, even just related to work. Like, hey, I don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen with this merger and acquisition, and I'm feeling a little anxious about it too. But what I can guarantee you is I'm going to
Mhm.
keep you informed every step of the way. As I get information, I promise to share it with you. And we're in this together. It's an uncertain time. And that's a very different relational, connective way of expressing leadership through a transition than like, I'm keeping it all to myself. I'll tell you what I know eventually when I know all the answers. I won't tell you anything wrong in the process. People
Mhm.
then are wondering and questioning and mistrusting. So I just wanted to say
Right.
that because I think if you use like the word vulnerability or something, people are like,
Mhm.
sometimes I don't want to tell everything at work. And I'm like, no, it's just being human, like being a
Being real.
whole
Yeah.
person. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Um, okay, let's get into hard conversations. So let's talk about how or why so many smart, well-intentioned, well-informed people struggle with hard conversations, especially in the workplace. And what is it rooted in? And how can we start to help people dig into having harder conversations?
Yeah, it's great. Whew. Can you imagine a world where people actually knew how to have hard conversations, like on a grand level, from our homes
Right.
to our companies to our governments? It's like, sometimes I think about that and I'm like, it would be radical, right? That we could address what
Yeah.
was the real underlying thing instead of skirting around it or hinting or hoping or implying or praying or whatever.
Right.
So,
Right.
why do so many super competent, capable people still struggle with that? I was just on with a client yesterday who's by all measures highly accomplished and highly educated and trained and longtime professional. And we were talking about just this. And it comes down to a few different things usually, I think. One is folks are really uncomfortable in discomfort. So
Mhm.
messy conversations or hard conversations can be awkward, like you were talking about 15-year-old Sarah putting on her nice outfit at her first job. It's like if you go back to that like adolescent awkward stage. I have two teens at home myself right now. Like, it's when you're trying to say something that's hard to say, it can be, you just don't feel very good in the moment. And so we are a culture, at least in the West, of quick satisfaction. And so
Yeah.
sitting in discomfort is something we haven't necessarily been training newer generations and such to do. So there's part of that. Just avoidance of discomfort is one of the reasons people struggle with it. Another one, people sometimes push back on this, but when I excavate, I see it over and over again. It's still about looking good. So even if people are like, I
Yeah.
don't care what people think of me, but no, nobody, it might not be good, might not be the word, but you don't want to look stupid. You don't want to look like you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't want to look like
Right.
you're uninformed. You don't want to look whatever, It's so
So
avoidance of
self-preservation.
discomfort and looking good are, I really think, probably the two. And then I guess the other one that I talk about in the book a lot is self-doubt, which kind of goes in with looking good, right?
Mm.
But like fear and
Yeah.
self-doubt are the two I talk about a lot, which is, oh my gosh, do I really know what I'm doing? And what if I mess it up and it all goes sideways and I don't get the promotion, or somebody files a grievance against me, or, so fear and self-doubt are at play there as well.
Mhm.
And then lastly, I guess we're not taught. Like, who has been, they're getting
Yeah.
better at that, actually. I come from an education background, and some schools are actually getting better at teaching I statements and like, I feel this when
Mhm.
you that. It seems so elementary, but like
Right.
we weren't taught how to be in discomfort, make clear requests, say the hard thing, listen to the feedback without taking it personally and getting super defensive. We just weren't taught. So that's what I would say.
So much goodness in there. One of the things that's happening in our household of teenagedom, with my 13-year-old is I've had this conversation off and on with parents over the years about how kids aren't given opportunities to have to practice sitting in discomfort or practice like mental resiliency.
Mm,
And so I see this a lot in schools that are like, well, we have a no homework policy, which I totally understand. Like, there's not great research supporting homework up to a
right,
certain
right.
age. So this isn't me saying like first graders should have 3 hours of homework. But what I'm recognizing is that my son has had a lot of opportunities for discomfort removed.
Mm,
And now I'm worrying as he gets closer to high school, I'm like, at some point, he's going to be thrown into the lion's den, and he's never will have had the experience of, he will never have had to sit in discomfort for more than 30 seconds at a time. And
mm-hmm.
that's not me being a great parent or a school education system being a great system. If like at some point he is not he hasn't had any opportunity to practice being uncomfortable and practice like
Yeah.
this feels really hard and uncomfortable and I have to stay in it for a minute. And so I'm making him do this running training for baseball right now because running is a struggle for him. And
Hmm.
it's the most hellacious 20 minutes of my life, 2 days a week. It's 20 minutes, 2 days a week. And it feels like about 17 days long. And we just argue the whole time. And the whole time in my head, I'm like, am I just like engaging in a power struggle that has no purpose?
Right,
But my husband and
right.
I were talking about it last night, and we were talking about he has not been forced to be uncomfortable. And so we feel like it's of value for him to be uncomfortable for 20 minutes twice a week.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if that means he's mad at me the whole time or whatever. And so I think when we equate this to the workplace, we look at if we are so protective of discomfort and
right.
self-protective of like not putting ourselves there, and we haven't had to demonstrate it and sit in it over time. And I think in parenting and education, we've been backpedaling on it as well. So what does a workforce look like 10 years from now? And we have
Right,
a kid
right.
who's like never had to do homework, never had to be uncomfortable doing physical activity for more than 5 minutes, like never had any of these
I know.
opportunities to be uncomfortable. are they going to be able to have hard conversations and make hard decisions and stand up for something?
Right. Well,
Anything
that's
you want to add
exactly.
in there?
Yeah. I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole of the parenting piece too. With this, I have an almost 17-year-old and almost 13-year-old. And honestly, they're the best teachers because they're like the biggest bullshit detectors. And, I have to work to really stay connected to a 16-year-old boy. Like, I'm very
Yeah.
proud of the fact that he tells me things and we still have conversations. And I've
Mhm.
had to bite my tongue a lot and listen more than I talk.
Mm.
And all of these things you can translate into the workplace.
Yeah.
If you want your
Yeah.
team, everybody contributes, you can set a norm around making sure every voice is heard before somebody speaks twice or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
But this
Mhm.
discomfort, anything, it's it bit I mean, I'm not a brain scientist. We need our colleague Dorsey for this, but when you
Yes. Shout
survive
out to Dorsey.
something, you realize your body learns that it can. So
Mhm.
partially those moments of discomfort, that awkward silence when you've asked for a raise, let's say, which I've definitely done, and you're sitting there and you're like, are they gonna say anything? Or they what's the like that
Right.
you survive that and then you go, okay, I can survive that, you know? And it sounds sort of silly because you're like, well, of course, your intellectual self knows that you can survive an awkward situation. You're an adult, you're in a leadership role. But
Right.
your neurological and your nervous system, your body self, like always wants to fight for safety. So it needs to have had some experiences
Mhm.
where it's like, oh man, that person got mad at me, or I got a bad performance review, or I had to fire somebody and it sucked, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we all need those moments. And yeah, I laugh because I'm a very laid back mom in some ways. And I'm not a very traditional person, but my kids have responsibilities and things they have to do. And I think I'm stricter than some of the other parents in some ways where we live because
Mm.
I have expectations that you need to participate in the family. So yeah, when we first started having my son empty the dishwasher, it was hilarious. He was like, "Again?" I go, "Every day." He's like, "I just emptied it yesterday." No, I know. But you see, there's a family of
Oh,
4 and we cook dinner every
yeah.
night. And so every night we run the dishwasher. And so then every day you do it again. And it took like a
Yeah.
few months. He's a brilliant kid. He was just like, at that time, he was probably 13 or so. And he was like, maybe 14. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he was like, again? Again? It's time again? I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
So there's
Vinny's
little
favorite with the
things.
dish. Oh,
Yeah. What's his favorite with the dishwasher?
go ahead. Oh, he forever has. This probably started. He's been doing it for a couple of years. All of our dishes are chipped, by the way. And I'm like, is this on purpose? Like, is he hoping that at some point, if enough dishes break or are chipped, that we'll be like, you shouldn't do this anymore? But his big thing, every time I would ask him to do it, he'd be like, this is the last time I'm doing this. I'm like,
Okay.
that's the story you want to tell yourself. See you
Sure.
tomorrow.
Right. See you tomorrow. But those little things, right? Like that builds a degree of, and of worldly
Yeah.
understanding. Like I say to the
Yeah.
kids, like, I don't like to do it either. I don't like anything that's, I work outside of the home largely because I'd probably be terrible. Well, also I'm married to an educator, so it's a necessity if you're married to a teacher. But it's also like that doesn't bring me joy. I'm not joyfully
Yeah.
doing those things, but
Right.
I'm doing them because it's what
Right.
makes our life really work,
Mhm.
and hard
And
conversations, like that's where change happens inside of organizations.
yes.
Hmm.
And I think you just hit it, that like this doesn't bring me joy. But if we only do the things that bring us joy, the opportunities that will be missed in the long
Right.
run are so massive that like what is the joy we will actually hold at the end of the road? And so you have to
Right.
do the things that don't bring you joy, whether it is doing the menial thing just because that's part of being part of a family system or organization and it needs to get done, but you're contributing to the greater good in some way, which ultimately is rewarding. Or it's sitting in that hard conversation and recognizing that you do have the emotional capacity to sit and hold space for someone in a moment that's really challenging and find a path forward together and be collaborative and whatever all these other things
Right.
are, that at the end of the day, it's it's intentionally stepping out of the joy into the hard thing to get the rewards that come on the other end, which I think bring exponentially more joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of short-term, long-term gratification in some ways, you know? Um,
Right.
and I have to say, like, I wish I didn't make a living helping people navigate hard conversations. Like, it'd be way more fun probably to, like, be a rock star. That would be probably my closet fantasy, you know? But it does get, um, I have been in a lot of very awkward, uncomfortable, angry, hard conversations throughout my career at
Mm.
this point of over 20 years. And it does get easier, right? It's like building up
Mm-hmm.
a muscle. And that to me is the distinction between one of the distinctions between leadership versus management. Both are essential, but leadership is
Mm.
like, what's going to move the needle? Management's
Yeah.
making sure that things get done. T's are crossed, I's are dotted, systems are in place, right? Leadership is, and I've had leaders, teams I've worked with, like, actually go through their calendar and put in 2 columns. What are all the things they spent their time doing as that are more the management category, and what are the things that they actually qualify as
Mm-hmm.
leadership category, and seeing, like, how balanced are you? If you're in a management role,
Yeah.
then that's appropriate to your role. But if you're tasked
Mm-hmm.
with holding the big vision, moving the strategic plan forward, um, those management tasks aren't going to be the thing that actually causes real change to happen. And so then you have to have those hard
Right.
conversations of, you know, where are we getting stuck? Like, how come, or I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how come it feels really hard for you to get this deliverable in on time? Because I've had leaders say to me, I don't understand. Like, why can they not I shouldn't have to have the hard conversation because that's part of their job
Mm-hmm.
description. And I say, let's go back to curiosity, because are they not doing it because they have executive function issues and they can't keep track of time? Are they not doing it because they are incompetent? You know what I mean? Like, they actually just are negligent on the job, which is what they always want to think it is, but it's often not that.
Mm-hmm.
Or are they not doing it, but they don't
Right.
have the skill? They don't know how to do it well, and they're
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed to ask because you haven't
Right.
built a trusting culture, but you don't even
Yeah.
know why something's not happening until you can explore that hard conversation, right?
Right. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the I appreciate the distinction between leadership and management when it comes to communication and when it comes to hard conversations. So what how can leaders be intentionally using communication as a pathway to connection? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, so obviously that's a huger conversation than we can have quickly, but the way that I talk about it is this communication for connection framework that's really built on curiosity as its base and connection as its pinnacle, and in between, like, if you had a pyramid
Mhm.
and coming with curiosity down here, like, what else could be possible here, or how else could this be interpreted, is the foundation. Then in between, it's like, let's be really clear with what we want and need. Let's use a lot of compassion towards ourselves and others, while we're trying to communicate hard
Mhm.
things. And all of that drives towards connection, right? Like, when we're really bringing clear, clean, not bringing up all the bad, you don't bring your dirty laundry to the fight kind of thing, when we're really coming with
Right.
clean, clear, compassionate, courageous communication, it drives for connection automatically, right? Like, in the book, I have lots of this little examples that seem so small. Like, I talk to people, I talk to strangers, and when my kids were younger, that would be embarrassing to them at times. Like, Mom, why you gotta talk to everybody? And
That's totally Vinny.
oh my gosh, and it has brought me unbelievable opportunities and connections. So, like, as small as being at the Jersey Shore for a summer vacation, because I'm from Philly, and, like, the parking lot is supposedly full, and I'm like talking to the nice guy because there was actually a human being still in the little kiosk, and chatting him up, being like, no, this is my favorite parking lot. Like, can I just go check? And finding a spot. And he's like, oh, great, you found a spot. Like little things like that, to like being at a big women's leadership conference. And you know this story, Sarah, and like going up to Esther Perel, who's like a multiple New York Times bestselling author, when there was a fire alarm and we happened to be outside of the hotel at the same place, and being like, I loved your talk yesterday. I'm new to your work, blah, blah, blah. And just authentically expressing my gratitude. And then she says to me, I was speaking on the sister stage at that event. And she was like, well, give me your talk. Let me hear yours. And she coached me. Like I got coached in the lobby of a hotel because I forged a quick connection with like my curiosity and, like desire for human honesty. So it's, that's what I would say. There is actually a framework, but the foundation is curiosity, layer in a whole lot of compassion, and make your goal connection. You have to have that in mind, right? Like that's what you're going for.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. All right. We've talked about so many great things. Are there any, if people are wanting to take one takeaway or take one small next step, is there anything that you would recommend they do where they could, and I feel like there's some examples you've already given, but anything you'd want to add that could immediately improve the quality of their work relationships or their leadership skills?
Well, since this is shameless leadership, I mean, buy the book. I'm holding it up for those of you who are just listening in your ears. I'm like doing a little dance with my pretty new cover, but it's like a super easy read. It's not long or dense, and it really is practical. Like I wrote it. I'm a former educator. I wrote it so that people would actually get value out of it and be able to apply it in real time. So that's one thing. Buy it for your teams. And then secondly, start asking more questions. Right? Just being more authentically curious, put on your childhood hat of just like, I wonder, especially when faced with a challenging personnel issue. See if you can bring curiosity to the hard conversation that needs to happen. So that's the second thing. Buy the book, use more curiosity. The third thing is play around with recognition. How can you really see people for their unique strengths and let them know that, even if you sort of stumble and it's kind of awkward, you don't have to be masterful at it at first. You don't have to do it the way that I would do it. A few words goes a long way, but it is important to be specific. Like, you did a beautiful job of designing that slide deck so that everybody could really understand what you were saying, versus like, good job. That doesn't really work, right? So the book, curiosity, authentic, recognition. I think let's just end with those three because I think those are too much more. We don't remember.
Those are so good. And I love your invitation to not just for an individual to buy the book, but to get it for your team. I think what's really powerful is, and I work with so many leaders who they think, well, like I have to be in charge of getting the information and then dispersing the information and making sure everyone understands the information. And what if it was like a group tool? What if we all learned the new thing and then had shared language, and then we can all like, yes, there's a level of accountability there for you as a leader, but also would your job be like a million times easier if you were all talking about how we're really working on improving our curiosity and compassion? Like, So don't just get a copy for yourself. Get it for the team. Make it a little team book club.
Thank you
because
so much,
then everyone
Sarah.
can be speaking the same language. Of course. Okay. So tell people, where can they get the book? How can people work? How do you work with folks? Where can they work with you and find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, great. You can get the book most easily on Amazon. My website is Sage, B as in boy, Hobbs.com, and you can find out about, I have like a 3-part signature series around communication for leadership. I do one-on-one executive coaching. And it's just really, I'm also on LinkedIn, of course. I'm not a huge social media person, but LinkedIn, I've been really leaning in and met some really wonderful people there that way. So I love, again, authentic connection. You can actually send me a message on LinkedIn. if you write it yourself. And I will actually love to hear from you. Like, that is really how I function in the world. I know how to use all the technology, but I'm almost like proud Luddite in some ways. Like, I want a little bit more analog. I want your humanity. So Amazon for the book. It's called Naked Communication, Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. Sage B. Hobbs for the website, and also Sage B. Hobbs on LinkedIn. And I would love to connect with you. Thanks, Sarah, for introducing me to your people.
Of course. Yeah. So I'll link everything in the show notes. If people go to sarahdean.com/podcast, scroll to the episode with Sage B. Hobbs, and then we'll have all those links right there, or wherever you're listening to this on whatever app you're on, you can just scroll below the episode right into the show notes and find those links as well. All right, Sage, final question for you. How are you currently showing up as a shameless leader?
I mean, in this moment, what's coming to me is telling people I wrote a book, just like being proud of something I made. And I feel like that's the shameless part, which is just like, let's all, wouldn't the world be a beautiful place if we shared our gifts more freely? So that's how I'm showing up in this moment.
Yes. I'm so thankful that you're working on sharing your gifts more freely. I'm going to encourage you to keep doing that. I love it when you share your gifts freely on my show every 5 years. Thank you so much for being here. I adore you. I'm so grateful for you, but I'm really grateful for this work. And I also really appreciate the way that you're taking something that is hard and can be scary and intimidating and wildly uncomfortable and making it more simple, more accessible, so that leaders can be more set up for success in their communication and then get all the benefits that come from that. So thank you for being here, Sage. And can't wait for our 15th anniversary.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. Thanks, Sarah.
So good. Thank you for allowing me to spend time in your ear today. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to this channel. To learn more about my speaking, training, and coaching services, visit sarahdean.com. That's SARADEAN. I would also love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn at sarahdean.com/LinkedIn or on Instagram at sarahdeanspeaks. I love hearing from my listeners. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. I see you, I hear you, and I'm holding space for you today and every single day.